Greetings and salutations, folks. I hope everyone is doing well and welcome to today's upload. Also, it is Saturday. That means one thing and one thing only. Saturday Nightmares, live from upstate New York. That is our live stream. Share theories, experiences, have a lot of fun. The community is truly amazing. I've seen friendships forged and just a lot of support, a really good community. It is unlike any other live stream in the cryptid and paranormal research on YouTube. I guarantee it. Hope to see you all there, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we jump into this upload, though, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share this video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, this is one of those interviews that I had the opportunity to do a couple years ago, and we actually had to break it into two parts. I have been trying to get in touch with the gentleman, Lewis. Unfortunately, my phone number has changed, and I don't have his phone number written down, so I hope that he is hearing this. If you could send me an email, I'd love to chat with him. But let's jump into this just absolutely mind-blowing two-part interview with just a lot of years of terrifying Dogman experiences. All right, everybody. Tonight I've got a really great guy. I've chatted with him a couple of times, and he's had quite a few Dogman encounters. He is a retired sheriff's officer from North Carolina. His name is Lewis. Lewis, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight.
All right, and you were talking earlier that you had roughly 5 encounters.
Yes.
You want to start from the beginning and share with everybody what has been going on with these? Because you said you think you're cursed with these guys. I think it's where you live, you know what I mean? Because you're out in the woods, and so the floor is yours, brother.
All right. Well, my first encounter was back in 1970. I was 5 years old. I had just started school. We had lived in Charlotte, and we had moved up to Gaston County, close to Spencer Mountain and McCaddenville. My father had lung cancer, and the doctor wanted to get out of the city, so we did. I was 4 when we moved there, and I had started school. I guess I was in school for about 2-3 weeks, and my mother, she never liked it up there. She just always had a bad feeling about that place, and I remember it had rained the night before, and I wanted to go out and play, with my toys. I had some Tonka trucks and stuff, and Mom said, "Okay, well, I'll let you go out, and take a towel with you." And she knew I was going to be sitting in the dirt. Well, I have to explain how this house was. It was actually a duplex, and when you walked out the back door of the kitchen, there was like a 10 by 10 deck, and it was like 20 feet off the ground because the house was built on a hill that sloped. And you walked out on that deck, and then you turned to the left and would go down a set of steps right up against the bricks. And then there was another, about 10 foot down, another area, about a 4x4 area, and then it turned to the right, and you went down to the ground. Well, the ground was mostly red mud and had quartz rocks. There was a little bit of grass, and I remember sitting there playing, and the way it was, the yard was in the back. It went down probably about 40 yards to the best of my recollection, and somebody had cleared out most of the trees that just had oak trees, and they were in a line, different lines. And as you went down farther, there was a little creek, and on the other side of that creek, it was just thick pines. Well, I was out there probably 15, 20 minutes, and I caught something in front of me, and it was white and grayish looking, and it was huge. Now, I watched a lot of cartoons, and to me, it looked like a polar bear, and that's what I thought when I first saw it. It's crazy as it sounds, but I seen it go, and it kind of went out of sight, and I continued playing with my dump truck and stuff, and then I happened to look up, and it's closer, and it's coming back to the left in the line of trees, and there's like 4 or 5 rows of trees that comes up from that little creek, and I watched it, and it went all the way to the right and vanished out of sight. I kept playing, and then I looked up again, and it was a row closer to me, and it only had one more row to come up to where I was at. I was about 10 foot from that first row of trees, and I started focusing on this thing, and I wasn't scared. It reminded me of a polar bear. It was almost cartoonish. And then I just continued to watch it, and this thing was huge. Now, I guess I was probably 3.5, 4 foot tall, and this thing was on all fours, and it would have been at least 2 foot taller than me when it was coming by. And when it got to the last row of trees, it stopped, and it was right dead in front of me. And I remember just looking at it, and it had its head down. It didn't look at me, and all of a sudden, it turned its head and looked at me. And that's when I started getting scared, and something just didn't feel right, and I could see its teeth in its mouth, and its eyes was red. Just maybe it's just because I was so young, but they looked like coals. They were just so red, and this thing was white, and it had like gray patches on it, and absolutely huge. And so I started scooting back a little bit, and it growled. And when it growled, I stood up. And when I stood up, it stood up. And my dad was, pretty tall guy. He was like 6'4", and this thing would have towered over my father. And it just looked at me, and I remember just in such fear, and I couldn't move. I don't know why I didn't scream out then for my mother, but that's coming. This thing, when it stood up, I could see its chest, and it was a pinkish color, and it had orange mud on it. And I could see the muscles that this thing had. And it was just the biggest thing I had ever seen. And I knew then that something wasn't right. And I started to take a step backwards. And when I did, I tripped over my Tonka truck. It was a little tanker truck. And I fell ass first in a mud puddle. And when I hit that, this thing let out a growl that I could feel all through me, and it was like electricity. Then I started screaming, and I started going up the first flight of steps backwards, like a backwards crab crawl. And I remember trying to go up those steps and find each step. And this thing started taking steps towards me. And I made it up to the first platform, and it went down on all fours at that time, and I was screaming and crying, and I just remember the fear in me. And the next thing I know, I had a big jolt from behind me. My mother had grabbed me by the back of my shirt, and my ass was off the steps. The only thing that was on the steps was my feet, and they were clicking coming up. She was dragging me up the steps, and my shoes came off. I remember that. And she was screaming, "Go back to hell, go back to hell." And I was screaming and crying, and when she got me up to the top, she opened up the door and just slid me in, and she went in and shut the door. Well, this thing started coming up the steps, and it came all the way up to the very top and stood up. And me being young, I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, kind of funny in a way, but me being young, you know, you think your parents is going to protect you. And I remember my mother shutting the blinds and looking up through the glass of the door, because she had to look up to see the thing. And I remember her standing by the door with a broom. She had a broom in her hand. And I was like, you know, thinking then, you know, I think about it now, you know, what was Mom going to do with that broom, you know? But Mom called my father, and my father told her to immediately, because Mom was just going off, and my dad could hear me screaming and crying in the background. And my father told my mother to call the law, and so she called, and my father was on the way home, and he got there probably 10 minutes after, and he drove all the way from Charlotte, and it didn't take him long. He must have been flying, but when the time he got there, there was 4 or 5 sheriff deputies with shotguns, and they seen the prints that were on the back porch, you know, and how big they were, and they were talking amongst each other. And my dad showed up, and of course jumped out and run in with his pistol, and you know, they told him, you know, to put his pistol down, and that they was going to handle it. And my dad was very upset and just wanted to make sure me and Mom was okay. And it was just something weird about that place. I'll tell you something real quick. When I was 4, when we first moved there, I guess it was a few months after we had moved there, and it was Christmas Eve. and me and my mother were sitting in the living room watching TV, and I was sitting right beside of her, and the Christmas tree was right beside the TV, and we're waiting on my father to get home from work, and all of a sudden there was this loud growl that came from inside the house, and the Christmas tree was like somebody grabbed it and shook it as hard as it could shake it. The balls were flying off the tree, lights, everything was flying off the tree. The tree was snapped, the top of it was snapped off, and there was busted glass everywhere. My mother had snatched me up, and we were scared to death. And that kind of, my mother, like I said, she really didn't like that place. There was something just not right about it. It was haunted or something. And so after the Dogman, and I didn't know it was a Dogman, you know, being that young, you know, I just knew something bad happened, and I'd never seen anything like that, and from the reaction of my mother and everything. But after the law enforcement left, I remember my mom and dad having an argument, and my mother telling my father, I'm packing up now, and me and your son are leaving. If you want to stay here, be my guest. Well, the next day, we moved. That was my first encounter with something like that, and you know, I was terrified. And after that, and I don't know why, but you remember the Pillsbury Doughboy? You remember him?
Yeah.
Little Pillsbury. Every time it would come on TV, I would start crying and screaming and tell my mother I hated that Pillsbury Doughboy. I don't know why. I don't know why I put those together.
Kids do the craziest things, you know.
Yeah, I really don't. No.
So after that, you guys moved. How much time passed before you had your next encounter?
Well, what happened after that? Now, when I was 16, there was my father passed away when I was 15, and when I was 16, me and my mother was talking, and friends, and she had told me a story about my grandfather. And my grandfather lived in Bessemer City, North Carolina, and he started the first taxi company back in 1929. And he had 3 taxis. He had 2 drivers, and then he drove one. And this was a hush-hush story that it was in the family that nobody talked about. And my grandfather one night he wasn't living right. He was drinking and all kind of other stuff, and but he ran his business, you know. Supposedly, you know, I never got to meet him. He passed before I was born. And he had picked some people up at a shack, or I'm trying to think what they called them back then, but it was illegal to drink.
Was it like a speakeasy? A speakeasy?
Yeah, a speakeasy, exactly. So he picked up 2 couples, 2 men and 2 women, and they wanted them to drive them out to this shack. You know, it was all dirt roads back then, and it was like 10 miles out in the country, and I'm sure, what was going to go on in there. But anyway, they paid him $50 to take them out there and sit in the car and wait on them until they were done. And they paid him for like 2 hours to sit there. $50 was a lot of money back then, and so he was sitting in the car, asleep, trying to get some sleep, and the car rocked, and he thought it was maybe them ready to go, and he yelled out and said, "Hey," because he didn't know how long he had been asleep for. He said, "Hey, y'all ready to go?" And he got no answer, and he just sat there for a minute, and the car rocked again, and he happened to look up, and there was this, how he described it was the devil. He said it had red eyes, and it was tall, hairy, it looked like a dog. It had the pointy ears, but he actually thought that it was the devil. And he cranked the car up, and he started hauling butt. Well, this thing jumped up on the running board of the driver's side of the car and was staring in at the window and growling at him. And it jumped off the running board 2 or 3 times and would jump right back on. He had the car floored, was trying to get away from it. And when he got back home, he was so scared when he got home, because this thing jumped off when he got out to the main road, and but it was still a dirt road. And when he got home, he was so scared that he didn't stop the car. He drove the car up on the porch into the living room. And the next day, he sold his taxi service, and that was on I think a Friday night, is what they said, and he was in church and got saved that next Sunday morning. It changed his life forever.
I remember when you first told me that story. You told me that about 1.5 years ago, and that was one of the stories that I've heard throughout, the couple of years that I've had this channel that stuck with me, because, your granddad was terrified, and just, that shows the amount of fear that he's flying home, and just, he's like, I'm just going to park it inside the house.
Yeah, exactly. He made a drive-through, But, I mean, I can't even, imagine what he must have went through, and I don't know how if people seen Dogman back then as much as they do now.
I think they did. I think it was just harder I think the internet age is what brings so many encounters out. You know what I mean? Like the stories can travel faster nowadays, with the internet. I think if they had the internet back then, there'd probably be about the same amount of encounters, maybe even more, because times were different. But, I think it's just, I don't really think there was a too big of a jump, you know what I mean? A lot of people are like, well, how can there be so many encounters that, you're doing one a day, and I'm like, well, most of the encounters that I'm doing are from years past, and it's just because of the internet and Facebook and all the other social media platforms that put people into touch with each other. Because you live in North Carolina, I live in upstate New York. I wouldn't be able to talk to you. I wouldn't even know who you were if it wasn't for the computer. So I think that was the big thing that brought all of these encounters, that we can kind of lump them all together. So now your second encounter was what? How old were you when the second one that you had happened to you?
I I was in my 30s when my second encounter.
Were you a police officer then?
I'm sorry?
Were you a police officer then, a sheriff?
No, okay. No. I had a pretty good life. I raced motorcycles for Honda, professional. And then I went to work for Ford Motor Company. I was an engineer for Ford for 14 years. Then I opened up my own business, and that's where my second encounter happened in Rowan County. And I lived off of Highway 3. I was living in Rowan County when Dale Earnhardt was killed. And I used to do a lot of work for his mother and family members at my shop that I had there. And anyway, I had a towing service too, and a couple of my drivers had told me of things that they had seen at night, but they thought maybe it was a bear, but they didn't know if it was a bear or not, and because it would get up on two legs, and and I really didn't put two and two together on it, because my second encounter with one of these things, I was living at the end of a dead-end road, and it was kind of out in the country off of Highway 3, and in Rowan County, and there was a big cow pasture field at the very part of my backyard, and the other part was woods, and then there was a big stream on the other side of the pasture, and then there was another cow pasture that did have cows in it. Well, I was married, and me and my wife would go down to that creek and pan for gold, and we'd find little gold nuggets, and we'd just do that on the weekend. And we were down there. We had done it many a times, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. One of my friends from New York had came down visiting, and I had just bought me a new Harley Davidson, and they came over to have dinner, and they were going to stay for a week, and he was going to hang out at the shop. Well, anyway, we have dinner, and I had a dog named Chewy, and he was a chow, and I had him on a runner in the back, and it was a real long runner, and I mean, he just had it made. Good dog, and I would, let him off. He would, come in the house and go for rides with me and stuff. Well, they were there at the house, and we had dinner, and we had played some cards, and Chewy was in the backyard just going crazy. And I looked out a few times and never seen anything, out the window. And so it was, I guess, about 11 o'clock, and they were getting ready to leave, and we opened the door to walk outside, and as soon as I opened the door, this smell hit us. And the only way I can describe it is like a skunk, the worst skunk, and death, and like a cow, a wet cow or something. It had that animal smell, and I thought it was possibly a skunk, because Chewy was shining a flashlight back there, and he was in his doghouse all the way up as far as he could get in the doghouse. And I was like, mess with a skunk, he got you. So didn't think too much more about it. They left, our friends, and the next morning, me and the wife got up, because that would have been on a Friday night, and it was Saturday, and we went down to the creek to do a little gold panning, just goof off. And when we got to the edge of it, it was like a 10-foot dip to go down in there, and it was sandbars. And my wife said, "What is that?" And we were standing up there at the top, and I looked down and I said, "Man, that's a footprint." And she said, "What? Couldn't make that kind of footprint. That thing's huge." And I said, "I don't know." So I started going down into the creek, and she's like, "No, don't get down there." I said, "No, I want to see what it is." So I went down and looked at the footprint, and it was probably 14 inches long and had claws on the front of it. And it looked like a dog print, but stretched out. It looked more kind of like a cat print, like a big cat, but no cat could have a 14-inch. You know, it was kind of skinny. You know, it just got skinnier as it went back. And whatever this thing was, I started following it, and my wife wanted me to come back. You know, she said, you know, don't follow that down the creek. You don't know what that thing is. And so I obliged her, and we went back home, and I had a 50 caliber Desert Eagle. I grabbed that thing, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to go see where that thing went and what it is." And she gave me down the road about it, but I went on down there, and I went through the creek, and whatever this thing was, it had like 4.5-foot strides. And it was intelligent enough to walk around the water and onto the sandbars. It would skip the water. And I come to a point where on the other side of the creek where the cow pasture was and the cows were, where it had went up, and there was cedar posts that had barbed wire on it, and that one of those posts were snapped off at the ground. And I was like, well, whatever it was strong, heavy at least. And I followed the tracks back, and they went through the field, and this field was made of bull talon, which is that's you know what bull talon is? It's where a cow pasture used to be, and it's all hard, real. If anybody's ever tried to dig in bull talon, it's just hard dirt. But there was prints, and I followed those prints, and they came right up behind my house. And I showed my wife that, and you know that freaked her out a little bit. And it was about 2 weeks later. I was out on the back deck, and the deck wrapped around. There was a patch of woods there, and the deck come from the back door and come out and come around almost to the front of the house. And it ended right there, and I had my grill and everything set up, and I had one of those yellow porch lights. And I had a couple of T-bone steaks on the grill. And I guess this was about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I was hearing something, you know, and, you know, it was dark, you know, and I kept hearing something that sounded like something was breathing, but I couldn't see, you know, because those yellow lights aren't that bright, you know. We had a floodlight on the house too, but we never cut that floodlight on, you know. And I had a grill light on the grill that just hung over the grill so that I could see the cooking. Well, there was a little window right there that me and the wife would pass food through, and you know, she was making our salads and baked potatoes, and I was doing the steaks, and I knocked on the window, and I told her, I said, "Go get my pistol and my flashlight." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Just please go get it for me." And so I've got the grill open, and I go to cut the flashlight on, and the flashlight batteries are dead. And I told her, I said, cut the floodlight on. As soon as she cut that floodlight on, what I saw in front of me, I will never forget it for the rest of my life. This thing was standing there, and 10 feet away from me, and I couldn't see it. The fur on this thing, it had pointy ears, and I was standing on a deck that was about 3.5 foot off the ground, and me and it were eye level, and I'm 6 foot tall. So this thing had to be 8.5, 9 foot tall. Muscular, shoulders were about 4 feet wide, ripped. Would have put Arnold Schwarzenegger to shame. And it was, the color's hard to describe. It was like, you know what fiber optics look like? You know, has the ends of fiber optics is like kind of a sheeny color.
Yeah.
And that's what it looked like. And this thing had the face of a German Shepherd, but its head was the size of a 14-inch car tire. I mean, I was in shock. And everything happened so fast. It was just staring at me. Well, what ended up happening is, now, this happened within like a second of what I just told you there. When she cut that light on, my wife automatically started screaming. The dog was in the house. The dog started going crazy. And when I seen this thing in front of me, I had a beer in my left hand that I had set on the grill, and the grill was open. And when I seen this thing, I jumped backwards, and my foot hit the bottom of where the wheels were, and the grill slammed shut. And when the grill slammed shut, this thing jumped. It was like it scared it. And its ears went backwards on its head. It leaned down a little and dug its foot in like a linebacker would do. And all I seen was teeth. And I started cussing. I just knew I was a dead man. And I pulled my pistol up, and I just aimed it straight at its face. And I was cussing it and telling it, come on, you SOB. If you're gonna get me, come on. But I'm gonna get you too. And it just sit there and looked at me. But with his ears pulled back on his head like that, and especially when it dug its foot in, I could see it twist its foot in like it was getting ground, like it could leap. And this thing put its head up in the air, and its ears went back forward again, and it looked at me and went, as if to say, you're not worth it. And turned around and just walked off. And 2 steps, he blended in, and I couldn't see him anymore. But I could hear him, you know, for a good 10 seconds going through the woods. And that was my second encounter. Now, I moved from there to where I'm at now, which is about 40 miles away. And when I first moved here, I've got 7 acres of land. When I first moved here, I was a hunter for a long time when I was younger. And when I moved up here, I started hunting, and I fished more than I hunted, but I'd still hunt, you know, because a lot of the people I met, my friends around here, they hunted too, and a lot of land behind me, thousands of acres at one time. They've started developing a lot of it now, but I went back in the woods and put deer stands up. I got a couple of nice deer because I thought I had got away from these things. But obviously they're everywhere. I mean, or it's just my luck. I really don't know. But I lived here for 5 years before anything ever happened here, and I had built a pond. I got a stream down there, and I had diverted my stream and built a acre pond, and built. Was gonna put a log cabin down there beside the pond so that I could put a little paddle boat in. I had bought a paddle boat and stuff, and I was going to stock the pond. And for the time being, I had put Malibu lights down through the woods and cut me a nice little trail, and I built a bridge across the pond. And it was, you know, it was wide enough for a four-wheeler to go across it. And so I had bought me a Coleman tent, and I said, well, I'm going to, you know, put the tent down here and stay, you know, spend the night. And everything was fine, and at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I never seen them except for the silhouettes from the moonlight over the tent. But there had to be at least 3 of them, and they were circling me, going around the tent, growling, those deep growls. I could hear the hard footsteps, and I'm laying in the tent in my underwear, and I've got my pistol with me, but I was scared to death to use it. Now, if something would have stuck its head in there, you know, yeah, of course I would have used it. But for a good 35 minutes, these things circled that tent and were knocking down tree limbs and growling, and I didn't know how many was there, but I figured there was at least 3. And when they went away, I heard them start going away back down to the other stream about 500-600 yards away. I jumped up out of the tent in my underwear and ran all the way back up to the house in my underwear and just left everything else down there. And the next morning when I came down, the tent was tore all to pieces. I mean, it was down, it was all ripped up. And then I've had a couple sightings. Last year when we talked, I know I sent you a photograph of one that was standing in the woods by a big oak tree.
Yep. Hey, speaking of that picture, do you mind if I still have that? Do you mind if I use that picture for the thumbnail for this video?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to use that so everyone can see the picture that you're talking about.
How much time do we have left?
I've got about 5 more minutes of recording time.
Okay. I'll try to make this quick then.
See, guys, hang on real quick, Lewis. What we're going to do is I've got X amount of time to record, so I'm going to do tonight's upload, and then tomorrow we're going to finish the recording. That way you guys can have his whole experience and encounters with these. So I apologize, but there will be a part 2 tomorrow night. So sorry about that, Lewis.
Oh, that's fine. I can tell you about the experiences I had in law enforcement.
Yeah, we'll do that tomorrow night if you want. Is that cool?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right. All right. So, I mean, this is crazy. I remember one of the things that you told me is that you feel cursed by these things. And to be honest,
it's like they everywhere I go now, I mean, well, there's been years that, I didn't see them, but my first experience, when I was 5, and then, I'm in my 30s when I have my second one, but it's like I move and, I'm having them up to this day, and I shared something with you that I'm sure we'll share later on that really devastated me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I think that, I don't think you're cursed. I think what's going on is, for some reason, you've got really bad luck running into these things. Because of, like, the choices, like you said, you were on an old creek, your first place, and you were right up butt into the woods.
There's always been water involved.
Right. And I'm thinking that's a lot to do with these encounters because out in Oklahoma, the gentleman that shared his encounter out there, he had a stream on a large amount of property, and there always seems to be a good source of water and a good source of game around where these things are spotted. And that was one of the things that Victor shared with us is, they will always be around those areas. So I don't think it's that you're cursed. I think it's just the choices of where you've lived, like right now where you're living. You're on 7 acres, pretty far back, and, that's perfect area for them. So
I'm wondering if I move to the coast.
Live in a high rise or something, you know what I mean?
Something, I don't know.
But all right, so guys, tomorrow night we're gonna revisit Lewis and finish the rest of the interview. Once again, guys, I apologize. It's the software that I have to use. So with that, I'm going to bid everybody a farewell. Lewis, want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, I want to tell everybody good night, and thanks for listening to my encounters.
All right, and this is part 2 of my interviews with Lewis. All right, everybody. Once again, I'm with Lewis. There is a couple of things that he'd like to clarify, and a couple of things that he wasn't really sure if he should share last night. But after a night of thinking about it, he kind of thought, well, let's let everybody else know the real deal of what happened on the encounter that he and his wife went through. But also there was some questions about his speech. I'm going to let Lewis share that right now with you guys. So I give you Lewis. Lewis.
Hello, everyone. Hope everybody had a good day today. I know my speech is not exactly right now. I'm trying to recover from a multitude of strokes I've had. I had my first stroke in my patrol car, and that ended my law enforcement career. And that was 5 years ago. And I've had 6 more. And on my 5th stroke, I could not talk, walk, anything. I had to learn everything back over again. And that's where I'm at now with my speech. And that's why sometimes I hesitate, because I know what I want to say, but it doesn't come out. Just bear with me on that. Also, I read some of the comments, and someone had said I was really brave to face that Dogman down. Well, I really didn't have a choice. I guess I should have explained it a little bit better. There was a bay window right there at the deck, and I think I told y'all me and my wife used to hand food back and forth through that window, but the deck stopped there. It was like a nook, and the house went about 6 foot farther than the deck, so I had nowhere to go. I was stuck there, so I had no choice but to face that Dogman down, and we didn't eat that night. The steaks were given to the dog the next day. My wife had made baked potato and salad and some other things, but we didn't eat that night. And luckily, I had went out with the plate and a beer in my hand to, get the steaks off. I had already cut the grill off and was just flipping, making sure they were done when the incident took place. And the other thing I wanted to share that I didn't share last night is we moved the next day. We had already paid rent up for the month, but it didn't matter. We moved the church we went to, and yes, I am saved. I give thanks to my Heavenly Father every day, because my doctors say that I'm a miracle, walking, talking miracle, because I've recovered from these strokes, and it could only be Him that pulled me through. A month after we moved, me and my wife separated. A year after we divorced, she could not handle the situation. Put her through counseling, even while we were separated. She ended up moving to Tucson, Arizona. She said she didn't want to be around any more farce, and she got hooked on drugs, and she died a few years later from a drug overdose. So I wanted to, clarify those things. Also, I'm trying to think of the questions that were asked. There were some questions asked about the photo. Jeff, is there anything you want to ask me about?
Why don't we wait until the photo, until we're up to that encounter? How about that?
Oh, okay. All right. And I'll start off with my law enforcement. Now, when I started law enforcement, I started out third shift, and this was, really don't want to say the county, because it will kind of give me away, but I will say the roads where they intersect. At the way out on Highway 27, Highway 10, Highway 18, we used to have to do a welfare check on a home out there that was off a dirt road, and you went back, and this house was, I would say, to me, it looked like 100 years old. I mean, there was no paint on it. The paint had all come off, but it was all still intact. And you would drive down this dirt road, and then you would pull into where you thought the driveway was. The only way you could tell it, they had red markers, reflectors out there. And and we were told not to get out of the car. And I had been there numerous times and not seen anything. You know, you would just pull in and the grass would be 4 foot high, like wheat grass, because it was not maintained. And you would pull in and go straight out to where the little barn was, and then turn right towards the house with the headlights on the house, then back up, and then pull out the driveway. On 2 occasions, the first one that I noticed something was there, I seen yellow eyes in the windows and under the back porch and the front porch, and they, you know, nothing ever come out. I always would look at it and say, you know, what is that? Big cats, big dogs, or, you know, what is it? Well, one night, I went through there and pulled in like I always did, and it was usually around 2:30 in the morning, and when I put the headlights towards the house, I could see all the eyes, and as I started backing up, 2 of these things come out from under the front porch, and I noticed that they were at least 4 foot tall, and they were on all 4s, and they were black, and they had yellow eyes, like a golden color, and they like bluff charged the car. And I sat there for a minute and, you know, trying to decide, should I call this in or not? And I didn't. I just remembered what, you know, was told. You know, we do a welfare check on the property, and I have no idea why we would do a welfare check on that property. That was never explained to me. You know, some of the officers, we'd talk back and forth and, you know, come up with different ideas on why we would do that. But the last time I was there, when I was pulling away, they followed me out to the edge of the driveway as I pulled out through the reflectors. And one of them let out a big yelp. And when it let out the yelp, as I was driving away, I could hear a whole bunch. I don't know if they were coyotes that were around the area or whether it was I call them critters, Dogman, whatever, whether they were doing the howling. And I'm thinking it was maybe the alpha that come out. And luckily, I was put on day shift about 2 weeks later. But I don't know. I don't think the day shift, when I was doing it there, if they come out in the daytime, I don't think the day shifts. I think the night shift was the only one that checked that house. But when I was put on day shift, I was put on in a different district. I wasn't up in that area anymore, and I was thankful to get to that.
Really quick, what were the some of the ideas that the other police officers shared with you?
They thought it was strange that we were ordered not to get out of the car, not to go looking for anything, you know.
Right.
And that was stress to us. They were like, you know, you don't need to get out of the vehicle. This is just a welfare check, you know, on the property. Did
any of those guys ever say if they saw anything too, or?
Yeah. A couple of the guys that were on my shift, you know, they would, you know, sometimes go by the same house, you know, on the days that I was off, you know. I'd be on 2, off 3, and on 3, off 2, So the nights that I wasn't working, those other guys would go by there, and they would always see the eyes. Sometimes they would see just one set, and other times they would see a whole bunch of sets of eyes. And they always would wonder what it was, but nobody had the kahunas to get out to find out. And we were told, not to get out of the vehicle, And like I said, the grass was like 4 feet high. It was like wheat grass. And that's the only way you could tell where the driveway was. It was just growing up grass. You just pull through those reflectors. And another time on night shifts, I had turned off 27 onto another road. I can't think of the name of the road right now, but it's a long road. It wraps all the way around to Highway 10. And I think it's about 9.5 miles. And there's a bunch of cow pastures and stuff. And there's one straightaway on that road. It's a backcountry road, and there's not many houses on that road. I know there's 2 or 3 bridges where you cross over creeks. And I was going down that road one night, and my side marker light happened to catch something while I was going down the straightaway. There was one area where you went through 2 cow pastures, and it was probably 500, 600 yards straightaway. And then it went into a hard left turn, and then a hard right. And then a couple miles later, you come into Highway 10. But I was going down that straightaway. I guess I was running 50, 45, 50, somewhere in that area. And my side cornering light, my amber light, caught something on the left side of me. And I looked over, and there is this Dogman, as I have seen them, and I know what they are. And it was running beside my car along the barbed wire fence on the shoulder of the road to the left. And it was keeping right up with me. I didn't try to pick up speed or slow down. I just looked over at it, and this thing was the size of a Shetland pony. I mean, it was pretty good size. I would say it probably weighed about 300, maybe 400 pounds, if I had to guess. And it did have a tail. I seen its tail flapping. It was real fluffy. And its mouth was hanging open, and its tongue was hanging about 6 inches out of its mouth. It was almost like a dog chasing a car. You know how you see dogs chase cars sometimes, just run beside it. And then, it went all the way to the curve. And when I got to the curve, it just slowed down and stopped. And I went on around the curve. And about 2 months later, and was moved to another district that was closer to my home. And I really liked that because I could park in my driveway and, get the car at 5:15 in the morning, sign on, and go. And this was around my area. And a lot of times I would leave my house at around 5:15, 10 minutes after, I didn't have to sign on until 5:30, and I would just, cruise around a little bit because I had got up early and got dressed. And then I, just looking at different things and going through different areas. And I was going out through one, I'm not going to name the road, just like I didn't name the other road because I don't want nobody to go out to these places. But I went down this one road. It's probably about 5 miles long, and it's all country. You might see 3 or 4 houses out there, and it's mostly pastures and woods, and just one area where I come through a real steep curve that goes off. You go down a hill, and you go to a real steep curve off to the right, and then you start going back uphill. When I come around that curve, there were 3 dogmen standing in the road, just right in the middle of the road. So I hit the brakes and stopped, and they all just stared at me. And one of them started walking up to the car. Well, I put the car in reverse and started backing up, and it started trotting towards me, and it was on 2 legs, and the other 2 were on all 4s. And as I was backing up, it started trotting towards me, and I hit my PA system, and really loud. It's not the siren, but it's called a blaster. It makes a really loud blasting noise, and when I hit that, they all scattered. The one that was coming at me, he took off. He was gone. He went down to all 4s and took off. And they didn't all go the same way. I think 2 of them went to one side and the other went to the other side of the road. But I seen them as clear as day. And I didn't see any tails on them. I really wasn't paying attention to that. I was just, and they looked to be a dark brown. They weren't black. If they were, then it was the way my lights shined on them. But they looked to be dark brown, and they looked. 2 of them were smaller than the one that came towards me. He was, I'd say, maybe 7 foot tall, give or take 5 or 6 inches. He was real lean. I'd say he probably weighed about 220, 250. He was muscled up, but he was lean. He wasn't like a, Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of dog man, but he was muscled up. You could see his stomach muscles as he was coming towards me. That was one of the things that really freaked me out when I see their stomach muscles, because I know that they've got a lot of mid-range power. Anybody that's got a 6-pack has a lot of core power. So there's a couple other encounters that I had that I'm willing to share right now. Last winter, my property from my back porch, like right now, it's so thick you can't see 30 feet past the woods. It's just thick, and it goes downhill into where my pond and the stream is, and then it goes uphill and downhill. It kind of like rolling hills. And in the winter, from my back porch, I can see all my property because all the leaves are gone, and so I went down to cut some firewood, and I'd asked a friend to come with me. And I told him, I said, I hated to say this to him, but, because I knew what was on my mind, I brought my AR-10, and I asked him if he wanted to do some target practicing, and I asked him if he wanted to, bring a rifle. And he said that he wanted to do some shotgun slugs. And I said, that's even better. Just bring it along. And so I drove my tractor down in the woods. We went down at the back part of my woods, and I was cutting up a cedar tree with a chainsaw. And as I was cutting it, he was loading it in the front of my Kubota tractor. And all of a sudden, he, pushed me in the shoulder because I was using the chainsaw. And he said, I just saw something. I'm like, well, what did you see? And he said, I don't know what it was. He said, it was just a flash. And I said, what do you mean, like a light? And he's like, no. He said, something run like a man. He said, and it was moving out, and it was up on top of the hill. And he said, it just went flying through there. And he said, it was black. He said, and it looked like a bear running on the back legs. And I said, well, show me where it went. And we both grabbed our guns, I said, why don't you grab your shotgun and all, because I didn't see it, I had my back turned to it. And he told me, he said, it went down close to your palm. That's the way it was headed. He said it was moving so fast. And so we started walking that way, and all of a sudden it came back the opposite direction towards us. Now, it was probably 60 to 75 yards away, still up on the ridge of the hill. And every time I watch your show, it looks just like the picture of the Dogman running through the woods. You know, the one that you've got where he's like running through the woods?
Yeah.
He's black.
Yep.
Look, every time I see that, I get chills. That's what it looked like.
Now,
but
the encounter you're explaining right now, real quick, that is the one from the pictures.
No.
Okay.
That is not. No. That's not the one from the pictures.
All right.
No. The one from the pictures is when my dogs alerted me, and that was the summer before. And I knew that I, had these things, because me and my neighbor had talked about it. And I knew from the encounter I had after living up here 5 years of when I had my tent down there. And I knew that these things are everywhere. And, because, they ripped up my tent. That's where I told you, I ran out of that tent when I heard them get far enough away and in my underwear and came home. And then the next day, my tent was just tore all to pieces, ripped up. And I knew something was going on then. But the summer before that, I think it was right before we had talked. But it was starting to, I think it was either spring or summer. And how this happened, my dogs alerted me. My yard, my backyard is fenced in, and I've got electric wire around the top of my fence because a couple of my dogs like to jump out. So I had to extend it up. It's a 6-foot fence, but I had to extend it up with electrical wire. And my dogs were barking and running down to the fence. And I usually keep my phone on me. And I was inside the fence because I had walked out the back door, and I was asking them, what are y'all barking at? What is it? What is it? And they would look and then look back at me and bark, and I started looking down in the woods and from inside the fence, and I didn't see anything at first, and I just kept looking and watching the dogs, and one of the dogs was looking at the bushes that were about 20 feet from me outside of the fence to the right, and the other dogs were looking down in the woods. And that's when I seen the one down in the woods move to the side, and I pulled out my phone and I snapped that picture. And then I took the other picture when he was gone, to show that he was standing there. You should have two pictures. One,
I still
where
got
he's
both
standing
of them.
there, and then the other one where you can see there's nothing there.
Right.
And how I found out the other one was in the bushes, I've seen these things on my property, and these things can hide like you would not believe. It had its head sticking through the bushes right there, to my right, and that where it's circled, and that's what my other dog was looking at, and was growling at, and it had its head sticking through those bushes, and I never saw that one until I blew the picture up and started looking at it, and then that's why I took the other picture to show that there's nothing there. It had pulled its head out of there, and the other one that was down in the woods, had walked away.
Yeah, that one that was the one that was standing.
Yeah,
the
he
larger
was
circle.
a big boy.
Yeah, he is huge. I mean, I was doing comparisons to like the dog house and like the tree, and I was trying to, but he was probably at least 7.5 feet. You could clearly see.
I went down there and measured that. I had two friends go with me, and we went down there because I was telling them about it, and they thought I was crazy. They were like, "Oh man, you're losing your mind. What kind of medication do you take?" And I'm like, "No." And I showed them the footprints. I think I sent you some footprints also with, I think a pack of cigarettes and a lighter for size comparison.
I'm not really sure. I've got a couple. I think the only ones that I have from you are the circled ones and the comparison picture. I have to.
Okay.
I'll go back and check, but.
Well, I still have those pictures of the one with the cigarette pack beside of it, and it's probably, I think I measured it out at 13.5 inches long.
Wow.
And yeah, it was huge. And then there's another one with a cigarette lighter, where it is a canine print, but it's in the sand right beside the creek, and it's bigger than my hand. You can see with the yellow cigarette lighter right there beside of it. It's huge. Yeah, I could open up my whole hand and stick in the print.
Right.
And that's basically it. But I don't. It's really messed with my life. Because I used to hunt a lot. I used to go out in the woods a lot, and I even when I go out in the daytime now, and I've got my head on a swivel. Every little sound I hear, I'm looking, and my dogs are pretty good at alerting me. I have 2 pit bulls and 1 Rhodesian Ridgeback, and they're all really good dogs. And but that's it, all except for something else that happened to me, and I'm sorry to the audience. I'm not ready to share that right now because I'm trying to deal with it. And if I can't deal with it, I don't believe you would be able to deal with it either. And I don't want to be ridiculed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a liar. And I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And for those of you that have never seen one, consider yourself lucky, because if you ever do see one, it's going to change your life. You won't feel safe if there's any woods around you. You'll think twice, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. That's what people don't understand.
It's just burned.
Once you see it,
burns
you can't
right into
unsee
your
it.
brain. Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
it's just like me being a law enforcement officer. I saw things. I suffer from PTSD because of that. I saw things in law enforcement that, you see a lot of death. You see a lot of things that you don't expect to see. My brother-in-law was in law enforcement for 33 years, and he retired. And I remember when I first started law enforcement, something that he told me. And he said, "Hey, when you think you've seen everything, wait till tomorrow." And that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Really
quick.
Thank everybody for listening to, taking the time out to listen to my encounters and the things that's happened to me.
Lewis, really quick. You and I had talked about this, and like Lewis just said, he's got one last encounter, and this is the one that really, he's got ones that have messed him up. This one, he shared it with me, and he needs some time to deal with this. And like he said, if he's not willing to, he still is having a hard time believing it happened. So what's going to make you guys think it happened? And, the comment section is getting better, but, when someone's on here and they're sharing their encounters, they're being open and honest, and ridicule is not something that should even occur on the comment section, because it's a way of somebody getting out something that is stuck in their back of their head forever, and they're tormented by it. And then comes this schlep that wants to, oh, bullshit, well, who are you to say anything or call bullshit, because you don't know and you weren't there. And it's just disrespectful. So I completely understand where he's coming from, and I want to thank Lewis for, coming on and sharing, because I know it was hard for him. Yesterday, before we even recorded, I was talking to him, and he was pulling back. And I was like, listen, I'm like, it's not live. Let's record it, and let's see how you do. And for the first couple of minutes, it really was, hard going for him. But then he opened up, and it was like opening the floodgates. And, so we got to remember that during while these people are sharing their encounters, it's not our place to ridicule anybody. That's bullshit, and I'm going to call bullshit on that one, because we shouldn't, make a mockery of somebody's encounters. Someone suffering from PTSD. And Lewis is a perfect example of that. And I was talking to him last night saying, maybe your strokes are caused from stress from these encounters and not sharing them with anybody. So I thank you very much for coming on, and you're a brave guy for coming out and sharing your encounters with us. And I hope that it helps you, and I hope that it helps somebody else come out to share their encounters, because I know I was talking to you today, and you said it opened a lot up for you, but you're here again, sharing, so it
did. It helped me a lot. 'Cause I've been holding this in, for quite some time. I've been through a lot when I was remarried, and on the 5th stroke that I had, that was probably my worst one. And in 2018 on Valentine's Day, my wife of 10 years walked out while I was bedridden. So I'm by myself now. I'm having to deal with everything. I'm trying to recover from everything. Nothing's been easy. It's all been uphill. It's been an uphill battle, and to get this, off my chest, does make me feel better. And I want to thank everybody for all the nice comments that they left. And if there's anything that you feel that I've left out that you want to know, just leave them in the comment section, and I'll let Jeff know the answers to them. If he wants me to come back on, and eventually I will. And when I come to terms with what happened to me, I will share it. I don't want to be ridiculed, and I'm not crazy. And I've got to be able to deal with this myself, because what happened to me was very surreal. And I'm trying to still figure it out in my head. So, like you said, if I can't come to terms with it yet, then I don't think anybody else will be able to, and I don't want to be ridiculed for something that happened that I couldn't help, and I don't know who to talk to about. I don't know how to explain it, but hopefully in the near future I'll be able to share that with everyone out there, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time out to listen to my encounters. And Jeff, I want to tell you thank you, and I love your channel, and I think you're the best channel out there, and you're honest, and somebody did make a remark that is awful funny. Everybody that's on your show has a southern accent and with question marks. Well, it's just a coincidence, I can't help the way that I speak, and especially trying to get over a stroke, and that takes me doing a lot of out loud reading, and you wouldn't believe what I've had to go through, but it's only making me a stronger person.
Right on, brother.
A better man for that.
Right
Thank
on.
you, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, really quick, before we end this, obviously that person didn't hear, the other interview from the guy from Connecticut, because he really didn't sound like he was a Southern boy. So, maybe he should start listening to some other uploads and keep his comments to himself. But everybody, I want to thank you guys for listening tonight. And Lewis, thank you again. And with that, me and Lewis are going to bid you guys farewell.
Good night.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.